Thank you. So, well, it's, there are some circumstances that makes, you could understand she was very busy. The minute you get the phone call, then, there is a lot of, in Hebrew we say balagan, in the department, newspapers, lots of emails, texts. You have to get a tailor to make a very nice, for men, nice suit. How is it called? Forgot the name. For women, it's a little bit easier, but you have to dress up really nicely according to very, very specific regulation of the Nobel Committee. She was busy. And she let her postdoc basically write the paper, and he submitted the paper. And she admits fully, she has not really looked into the paper very carefully, and somebody else at some point told us there are issues with that paper. Then she asked the postdoc, show me the data, show me this, show me that. It's exactly Sean's case, the exact same story, except that she immediately retract the paper, publishes the fact that she's retracting the paper. She's not trying to hide anything. She's not trying to claim, yeah, it's right, but I believe that I did the experiment. I just, manipulated the data a little bit or something. She flat out immediately retract the paper. And immediately on Twitter, lots of responses. I'm not any kind of scientist, but I want to applaud you on being forthright and honest about your findings. You have set a good example for your community and for community at large. So immediately she gets tons of accolades. Good for you. Retracting is part of doing good science. You're doing good work and setting an example. Seriously, so much respect. Viva, Ancestral. So the community is responding in a very, very different way that responded to Arnold's story. More of this a little bit. I was in the middle of all the Nobel Prize hoopla and did not pay enough attention to this submission, so it's my fault. She takes full responsibility. That's the big thing. The willingness to admit mistakes publicly sends a message of trustworthiness to fellow researchers. So retraction is not a bad thing. It's actually part of the scientific endeavor. It's okay to make mistakes. It's not okay to do misconduct. But if you have honest mistakes and you recognize them, you retract the paper. Nothing bad happens. It happens to the best. There are many, many Nobel Prizes that retracted papers. Retraction has no negative connotation unless it's associated with sport. So obviously this made it to all the top news agencies. Here, BBC picks up on this. And this is Forbes. So just food for thought, results are not reproducible, lack of lab notebook documentation, missing raw data point. So why is this so? You guys should participate as well. Admitting the problem, reacting fast. Single events. Yeah, all of these answers are correct. Humility. So here are two cases. You have the Sean case and his response to the committee that was appointed and accused him of all these misconduct. And Frances, responding to her postdoc, doing something very, very smart. And the outcomes are totally different.
Those are students.
It was, I think, a postdoc or a student.
Sean's advisor also said you were wrong.
Sorry?
Sean's advisor also said you were wrong.
Sean's advisor was kind of out of the story, and he threw Sean under the bus when he was asked. He said, I was a passenger, which is a wrong answer for a mentor to give. He really did not take any responsibilities. I mean, the guy just wrote papers by himself. Backlog just had his name on those papers. I don't know if he even read them.
And your student, he also took responsibility?
The student? I don't know the story to that level of details, but I don't know if there was a real misconduct here or not, but there were missing files, missing lab notebooks, and so on. I don't know what ended up. I would suspect that this student of did not get the proper promotion following that event. But for me, this is such an interesting comparison because it's exactly the same. And the outcome is 180 degrees different. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. And this is from this month. It's not only Frances Arnold, there are lots of retraction and concerns coming from Nobel laureates. So here, paper co-authored by Nobel laureate raised concerns. Image integrity issues have so far led to 17 retractions, correction, or expression of concern. This goes back to the same concept of what we discussed about the Alzheimer's story, gel electrophoresis and blots and things of that sort, image manipulation. In 52 articles co-authored by Semza, he got the 2019 Nobel in Medicine that were published between 2000 and 2021. Since 2011, 17 of these papers have been retracted, corrected, or had an expression of concern issued on them. The editorial notice cites the potential alteration, reuse, or incorrect labeling of images showing experimental results. Another 15 of the papers are currently under investigation at their respective journals, Nature, New Team, Use Team has learned, and so on. So this is just being investigated right now. But it's not one paper from a Nobel laureate that retracts. It's a bunch of papers. But interestingly, those papers come after the Nobel. I mean, after the work that got them, the work was done, I think, before 2000. The researchers say that TEMSA most influential contribution to research on oxygen sensing, the identification of protein complex called KIF1, has stood the scientific test of being reproduced and built on by others. So he basically discovered this very important protein KIF1 that basically sends oxygen to cells, and the whole signaling cascade based on this. So that result stands high, and it's reproducible, and the paper is good, and everything is okay, and he got a Nobel for this. But after he got the Nobel, he wrote many papers, and there were issues with images of gels, mostly, I think, on this paper. So now this is being interesting. The work under discussion on PUB here does not have the same broad significance, although its total extent is large. It remains to be seen whether the problems with image affect the paper. Conclusion. Okay, so basically, it's very, very new, very fresh. People made this complaint, so now people start to look into this. We don't know yet if there was any real foul, any misconduct here or not, but it happens to the best. So nobody is accusing this guy of falsifying the result that got him the Nobel Prize. But papers after maybe become very busy, had to travel all over the world, give lectures, and he gave a lot of responsibility to one of his postdocs who was easy with image manipulation. We don't know that. And it happened, as I said, to Nobel laureates, it happens to everybody, and it happens to me as well. So this is a paper we published. Title is Peptide-Coated Quantum Dots for Biological Application in IEEE Transaction of Nanobioscience. That was in 2006. I asked a postdoc to write a review paper based on our work and other people's work, and I wasn't interested. And it turns out that my postdoc indeed wrote a full original review paper, except for the introduction. He was lazy and he copied few sentences for, actually almost 2 paragraphs from the introduction of this paper by Wייס. So I invite you to go and look, but basically in the introduction, he copied the introduction from another paper. I have to say, he wrote an original review, but he plagiarized the introduction. And many years later, I get an email from this guy, Wייס, and said, hey, look, your paper has the exact same introduction as my introduction. And let me tell you, you don't want to be in this place. It's so traumatic. It's really going down to the question of trust. You have students and postdocs in your group, and you want to trust them. You want to give them free hand to explore and become scientists. You don't want to sit on them and, and every little tiny thing and show that you don't trust them. But getting this email from this guy saying that you plagiarized his introduction is not one thing. Whenever there is a suspicion for misconduct or any problem like this, the first institution to do the test, the check, is your own institution. So immediately when that happened, we both went to the journal and we went to UCLA. UCLA has a unit that looks into those things and you have to report. So obviously I did not know about this and I wasn't careful enough. When I read the paper and gave my comments, I did not imagine that my postdoc would plagiarize introduction. I gave him my comments and then iterated a few times and we submitted the paper. And surely enough, I didn't have too many comments on the introduction, but it was written well. So what happened here, this is not a retraction, this is not an erratum. we basically followed the rules of the journal, and what was happening as a result of the investigation was notice of violation by IEEE. After careful and considered review of the content and authorship of this paper by duly constituted expert committee, this paper has been found to be in violation of IEEE publication principles. The first paragraph of this paper contains significant portions of original text from a paper cited below. The original text was copied without attribution, including appropriate references to the original author and paper title, and without permission. Identification or characterization of copper oxide and zinc oxide binding polypeptide to E. coli surface display, toward the understanding of metal oxide binding by time and now. The first author, Gopal here, expresses his deep and sincere regrets to Quarantine, Dai, Sastry, Baritza, Schwartz, and Banieks, his own co-authors, who were unaware of his violation of publication principle, and the readers of his article. So yeah, it was a one-guy work. It was my postdoc, and he did it all by himself. His excuse later, once that was discovered, was I just put it as a placeholder. I copied and pasted it, and I meant to go back and change the language. Did not. We were caught. We had to take the right measures to tell UCLA about this, to tell the journal about this. They set up an investigation. That's a result of the investigation. So as a mentor, as a professor, once you start to mentor other people, there is always this issue of trust. What is the culture in the group? How do you make sure that one of your co-workers, mentees, doesn't surprise you with something really very unpleasant? I think it's very remote. It happens all the time. People have different motives, different drive, and some people are so motivated to succeed, and they are willing to do things that you yourself would not be willing to do. But how do you guarantee that it doesn't happen to you or to your group? And I debate myself even today. Of course, that was a very awakening experience. On the other hand, you want to give your students the feel of trust, if you trust them. So you walk a very thin line here between trust and correct scientific conduct. I wish none of you will ever experience this. This is obviously not as severe as a full retraction or fraudulent science, making new data from the air. But still, Gopal allowed himself to copy text from another paper and cut and paste and put it, not giving any credit, no citation or nothing, just use other people's text, which is not okay. Yes?
How were you supposed to know that he copied some text from some other paper?
So nowadays, not at that time, but nowadays there are lots of filters. In fact, you don't need to do this anymore because the journals do this. So there are plagiarism filters.
Okay, so how were you supposed to know?
At that time, I did not know.
But then you couldn't.
There wasn't much I could do at that time. But retrospectively, I know what I should do now. But I still don't run plagiarism filters today when we submit the paper, because I still want to pass my students. But I hope that all the journals that we submit to will do that. Sorry?
They do that very thoroughly.
Yeah, nowadays they do this. But in 2006, they did not. So you submit something and it's plagiarized, they will flag it. All right.
I don't think you can even use from your own paper.
Sorry?
My advisor wanted he didn't copy and paste, but he copied and pasted instructions and changed.
Oh, from your own paper? Yeah, you cannot copy and paste from your own paper. you can use figures from your own paper in a review paper, and when you give citation, and the journal needs to give permission. But you cannot copy introduction from one paper and put it in another paper. You have to change the language.
You know, even if it's like too similar.
Yeah, yeah. So this is exactly what we are discussing now. So this is from January 2022. Journals adopt AI to spot duplicated images in manuscript. So both for text and for images, there are now AI filters that look for plagiarism or copying, you know, a figure of one, figure of another. This filter would detect that Sean took a page, you know, one graph from one paper and put it in another. But this is 22 years later. And there are lots of websites, interesting websites for people who have not picked up a topic as of yet. I recommend to go to this. There is a retraction website. There is the Office of Research Integrity. They have a very fancy website. Here they have a definition of what misconduct is, and then they basically follow over time, you know, all kinds of cases. This is from their website, just by year. It goes up to 21. I haven't checked for 22. Basically, you can see the number of cases of misconduct that they track. So it happens all the time. Committee on Publication Ethics, that's another organization with their own website, promoting integrity in scholarly research and its publication. So they also follow fraudulent science cases. This is taken from their website, top cases in 2020. And they rate them top 5 cases. I won't go through all of these, but you're welcome to look into those websites. Really, really good stories, good reference to pick up the topic if you haven't picked up the topic as of yet. And you can see that they deal with all these cases, allegation, and the responses, and so on. So really good reads. Nowadays, people do this mostly by social media. There are groups on social media that really try to nail down, you know, all these misconducts. This is a very interesting lady. She was a scientist. Well, she is still a scientist, but she kind of quit her day job and she became the one expert of image manipulation. So all image manipulation cases that come about, it's Elizabeth Big. And I think she's by now making real money out of this. It's her livelihood. People go to her and she is fantastic in finding, you know, all those cases. So she has a website. On Wikipedia as well, you can find all the very famous misconduct cases. There is an entry. I don't know if this is kept updated or not, but it goes by topics, big cases in biology, chemistry, computer, physics, and so on. All of these make obviously very good, interesting reads, and also topics for your presentations here in the class. So this is it for me. I would like to now open today's lecture for just discussions. Anybody has anything to say, please say. Also, people at home, online, feel free to open your mic and some discussion. I do want to mention that we got only about 15 people submitting their CUME exam online, and then you missed the deadline, and some people have not submitted the work. So contact me because this is part of the course. Questions, comments? What did you learn over the last 6 minutes?
Just look at what Gopal is doing right now. He is a professor of investor response.
Yes. So for many years, sorry, somebody's trying to say something. I'm here at the podium. Can you open your mic? So just about Gopal. Gopal left my lab. This happened like 3 or 4 years after he left my lab. He did not get a professor position. He got some kind of a researcher position in Wisconsin. And over the years, I think he did enough good work over there that only recently they promoted him. He's very, he's in his 50s. They promoted him to an assistant professor recently. So it slowed down his career. Yes. More?
Can I
Yes.
ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Regarding the Sean scandal, I recall you said at the beginning of the last lecture, that it was supposed to be harder to publish from Bell Laboratories because you had some internal process.
Yes.
But afterwards, I didn't get exactly why this internal process failed in that time.
Well, nobody knew and understood that. It wasn't a very hard rule that unless you do this, you cannot send it out. That was the norm. Everybody followed the norm. He just didn't do this. But there were no penalties for not submitting the paper to internal review. It was expected that everybody did that. And Sean decided not to do this. So nobody knew that he submitted a paper without an internal review. He took the liberty to submit his papers directly without internal review. It was a big surprise for everybody. More questions? So what I want you to take out of this is ask yourself every day how something like that doesn't happen to me. We went through all kinds of issues related to how to do science better. The replication crisis, open science, peer review, retractions, misconduct. Science has been a gift and promoted civilization in a fantastic way and proven itself again and again and again. But we are realizing nowadays that it's not absolutely perfect and we can do this even better. So that's the reason we have now a new discipline called meta-science. The idea is to study science by scientific methods to make the message better and not waste huge amount of money. I'm looking forward for some of you to discuss the Alzheimer's case, and I would like to know how much money was spent on tau, reporting tau, and the hypothesis that this is responsible for the development of the disease. I don't think that the scandal that we are just starting to hear says the opposite. The jury's still out. We need to learn a lot about what is real and what is not real about this original work from the early 90s. But that work had manipulated gels, which were basically fraud. And I would suspect hundreds of billions of dollars were spent by funding agencies and pharma based on that one paper that is fraudulent. So in some ways, it's even worse than Sean case, just because of the expenditure that came after it. Not as spectacular in terms of the misconduct, but as spectacular and more in terms of money. More? Yes.
When it comes to fraudulent stuff, it seems like whenever you have self-gain to get from it, there will always be people who, I mean,
In every field.
it comes from a point of putting self-gain over the scientific method, over the
Or self-gain
process.
over other people's gain. In general society, right? You have crooks and criminals all the time.
Good.
15% of all population will, but that's, I think, the statistic.
The point is that no matter the way I see it, no matter which system you will build, people will learn how to.
So this, I think, really calls for criminology.
Yeah. So it's more
to study human nature, which they do. And if I'm not mistaken, in any field, science included, about 50% of all people will go there. And can we change that? At least that ratio for scientists. Make that percent lower. What do we need?
My assumption was that in the sciences, you would have less people.
Of course, that's a priori, everybody thinks. Before I was teaching this course, that was my belief as well. But you find so many cases, and not like old cases that, everybody learned from those cases and that's it. It's happening today. And I brought examples. After those famous cases happened, publicized, whatever, and big measures were taken to punish, people still do this. How come? Science is a more pure profession. It's really, people go to science because they want a betterment to the life. And it's still cheap in big numbers. But it's somewhat, it's a disappointment to realize this. And the question is, what are the tools we can develop to be better and stop it or reduce it? You definitely don't want to be near people that do that, because that's very toxic. Questions for people at home? All right, so I'm here for the next 2 meetings. And I really ask if you can make the effort to come. We are moving to another room next time, like 303, we'll meet in 303. It's a round table, it's much nicer. 5 to come so we can see your faces. And what we are going to do starting next week is your own presentation. Finish the CUME assignment and come prepared. You are supposed to have something on the order of 15 to 20 minutes presentation on a topic that I authorized, and a 2-page PDF summarizing the main points of the presentation. And everybody should be there because you are speaking to your own class. We'll take attendance very seriously for that part. Okay, no more questions. Thank you, and I will see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.